Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Giannato Clinic series on metabolic wellness. We've been talking about carbohydrates, and in today's episode, we're going to conclude our remarks about carbohydrates, and then in subsequent episodes, move on to proteins and fats. As you recall from the last video, we said that the bulk of the carbohydrates in the typical American diet were simple carbohydrates. These are simple sugars or monosaccharides, as we call them. And these are all sugars, refined breads, cereals, all what we called high glycemic carbohydrates, which we'll get into that term in a minute and show you how harmful excess high glycemic carbohydrates can be. 30% of the American daily caloric intake actually comes from sugar. And this is not good because sugar is a very, very addictive substance. So we know that most Americans fail to consume the needed 6 to 10 servings of vegetables and fruits. And when I say that, of these 6 to 10 servings, really 7 servings of vegetables, 2 to 3 servings of fruits, all right? Because fruits, if eaten in excess, are simple sugars also. And even though they don't generate a direct insulin response, fructose, the simple sugar in fruits, can go to the liver and, in excess, be transformed into triglycerides or fats. So we have to watch that. So 6 to 10 servings of vegetables and fruits really means 7 servings of vegetables, 2 to 3 servings of fruits. These are complex, nutrient-rich carbohydrates. They're better for you. They contain fiber. They're slowly metabolized. They're a great source of energy. Unfortunately, the average daily consumption of carbs among most Americans is no more than 3 servings. Right? Carbohydrates have become known as comfort food. They give a rapid but short-lived sense of well-being, and that's because when you ingest a carbohydrate, it's metabolized most of the times very quickly into simple sugars, which gives you that short-lived high, that short-lived sense of well-being. It lights up the brain, the addictive center of the brain. All carbohydrates stimulate the body's production of insulin. Now, this is important. Too much insulin makes you fat and keeps you fat. Too much insulin accelerates the aging process. And too much insulin increases your risk for chronic disease. If you want to get into this in depth and not wait for subsequent video series, my blogs on the Giannato Clinic Facebook page, the blog of August 20th addresses insulin, the hormone insulin, its actions, and the consequences of having too much insulin and too little insulin. The big point here is insulin is a storage hormone, and it stores things in the form of fat. So we said when you have too much sugar coming into the system and you've maximized the amount that get into the cells for energy, and then you've maximized the storage amount, what does the liver do? Through the action of insulin, it converts the excess sugar into fat. And there is no limit to the amount of fat that the body can store. So the carbohydrates that you choose, simple or complex, along with the protein source that you choose, will determine how much insulin is secreted and how well the body performs for the next 4 to 6 hours. So let's get into the glycemic index. You note on the slide, index is misspelled. It should be INDEX. The glycemic index is an index of how rapidly the various carbohydrate-containing foods tend to raise blood sugar levels. The glycemic index provides a means to compare the relative impact on insulin levels of one carbohydrate to another. Simply put, the higher the glycemic index, the greater the effect of blood sugar and subsequent insulin levels. When you have glycemic indices are scored from 0 to 100, 100 being the highest, and when you have a glycemic index of above 50, what you're talking about is that the carbohydrate is broken down into simple sugars very rapidly. These sugars can flood the bloodstream, and again, if there's too much or there's too much in excess, they will be converted into fat through the action of insulin. And the higher the glycemic index, the greater the insulin response to deal with the excess sugar. And remember, too much insulin can cause fat deposition, can accelerate aging and can cause the chronic diseases of aging. So it behooves you to choose your carbohydrates carefully. The majority of carbohydrates consumed should come from those with the lowest glycemic index, vegetables mainly, and then fruits. Most adults should strive for 5 to 7 servings of vegetables and 1 to 3 servings of fruits per day. Limit high glycemic index grains and starches such as pasta, bread, potatoes, bagels, and cereals. These are loaded with calories per given volume, and they raise your blood sugar quickly, they raise your insulin levels very quickly, and as we said, we've already mentioned the deleterious effects of raising insulin levels too quickly. So, let's talk about fiber. Dietary fiber is actually a form of carbohydrate. It's the part of the plant-based food that is not digested. And because it doesn't get digested, it provides no calories. But that's not to say that it doesn't have any functions. Foods high in fiber include fruits, vegetables, oat bran, oatmeal, beans, and other legumes, and brown rice. Now, if you're going to eat any high glycemic carbohydrates at all, brown rice would be a good choice. But again, you can't consume these things in excess. If you're going to go to oatmeal, make sure the oatmeal is not processed. Prepackaged oatmeal that you just heat up in the microwave is processed, has a lot of hidden simple sugars in it. This is not the type of oatmeal you want. You want the steel-cut oats that you cook over the stovetop. A number of diseases are located with or are associated with low fiber intake. Look, metabolic diseases including obesity, diabetes, and gout, all associated with low fiber intake. Cardiovascular diseases including high blood pressure, stroke, and heart attack are all associated with low fiber intake. And more importantly, gastrointestinal diseases including prolonged constipation, hemorrhoids, colon cancer, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease, all associated with low fiber diets. It behooves you to choose your carbs carefully, ladies and gentlemen. Choose complex carbohydrates, choose carbohydrates that are high in fiber, and if necessary, as you get past the age of 50, you should be taking a fiber supplement every day to add to your fiber intake. Your choice of carbohydrates is important. It's important because you don't want to accelerate the aging process by choosing simple, high glycemic carbohydrates. You don't want to accelerate the fat storage process by choosing high glycemic, simple carbohydrates. The choice is up to you. Unfortunately, most of the big food companies propagate the idea that their processed foods are good for you, which they are not. They're loaded with hidden sugars, and as we will see in a subsequent video, sugar is a highly addictive substance on the same level as heroin and cocaine. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. The next one, we will talk about the function of proteins in the body. Have a good day.